What is up, DTube Steam blockchain? So I watched a great video on DTube today from Scott Cunningham, which talked about how new advertising is they're using, let's say, machine learning and AI to predict and the predictive well, they're using AI to sort of predict what kind of advertising that pops up in people's faces when they're using the internet. And these are getting better all the time. And he talked, he made a great video on YouTube that you should go and watch. And he talked about the potential concern of this, where people don't really own their data, and you have these trackers, and it's not transparent how advertisement is being fed to you. And he was talking a bit about human uniqueness, which you should go and check out his views on. In this video, I want to do a video response about that, because he talked a little bit about, well, will humans be able to be unique when you're going to have all these devices that knows what you're thinking about and can predict what you're going to do the next moment and stuff like that. And I want to add my input on it, like how I look at this with human uniqueness. So in terms of advertisement, yeah, it's super annoying if you're using Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or just any other place on the internet where they have advertising, or YouTube. They kind of pop up in your face, and it's quite annoying. And usually these ads these days are getting quite annoying, more intrusive, more in your face. But I think it's just going to be a transition phase, because we see on Steam blockchain and the better technology that people eventually get, humans are going to get smarter. They're going to create better systems, as we have with the blockchain systems, where people use trading tokens back and forth, and they are not really they're not forced to watch advertisements. So I think eventually that eventually we're going to move to a phase where it's definitely going to be a better experience. But in terms of human uniqueness, the way I look at that is that, well, the identity of a human, that I think it is good, because we're going to move basically from, we've been identifying a lot with things we're thinking about, or our emotions and stuff like that. And the AI that is going to be on the internet, and probably already is, it's going to increase people's awareness about their own thoughts. And then eventually people are going to realize, wait a sec, okay, I used to have some thoughts. That's not actually my uniqueness. That's just, I created my own thoughts, and I should probably enjoy it, because it's sort of my creation. And the way I look at human uniqueness then is that, like, people are still unique, but their thoughts are not really going to be that unique unless they really, let's say, observed something new. So what I like about this AI that's going to increase people's awareness about their own thoughts, first, it's going to look pretty bad, because it's going to seem as, well, if people identify with their thoughts, it looks horrible. It looks like this thing is going to control stuff that I do. But what people are going to move into is basically they're just going to get an increased awareness for that their thoughts are just a small little thing that is coming from their own uniqueness, and that these thoughts are just a very, very petty thing. It's just, we can only have the thoughts. We can only have thoughts about stuff, data input from our 5 senses. So we eventually are going to realize, well, these thoughts are not really that much information. You can go out, let's say, in a wood, or we shouldn't say woods, we should say trees or nature. But there's more data everywhere, sort of, than what we can sort of cook up in with sort of with our thoughts and how that work. So humans eventually going to realize, well, humans are unique, but we're never going to be really that unique in the thoughts or the emotions, because people sort of go through the same kind of emotions and thoughts in general. But what is going to be unique is humans going to realize that human uniqueness comes down to that there is something else, and that is something that the human themselves have to sort of discover. They have to sort of dig into themselves to see what kind of human being they are, and what actually it is that makes them unique. Because the more awareness that's going to pop up about the AI and about these tools, people eventually are going to have to dig deeper into themselves and ask these questions about what is it that makes a human unique. And they are going to realize that, well, all these thoughts and all these emotional experiences that a person can have, we can create them. We can create them with virtual reality. We can make people feel certain emotions by creating virtual experiences. We can make them start to think in a certain pattern by getting them some experience in the virtual reality with the smartphone and the computers. And we can sort of, but when you really start to increase awareness for, let's say, when you really know how the human mind works, and when you know how human thought works, and then you realize, like, when you're observing other people, they're doing it a lot, and you can also observe it in yourself, you can start to see a lot of patterns that you can just go on the data that you already have. And you see that if you put out some new data in front of someone that is maybe super identified with their thoughts, they get many times they feel challenged, because there is a lot of new data coming in, and it's almost as they have a fixed view, and that they sort of don't want to get that challenged. But then eventually people are going to realize that it probably is better if the AI just do most of that stuff, and human can just focus on being a human being. And because it's like, if you really go look at what people are thinking about, it's basically the same things. So of course the AI, it can predict most of these things, because we sort of think that we're doing something super magical or super advanced, while we're not really doing that. You can notice, especially if you observe yourself. I did this, I think, around 10 years ago. You basically set up a camera that records yourself 24/7, and then you go and watch that the day later, and you basically see, probably most humans, if they would do it to themselves, record themselves 24/7 with like a webcam mode, they sort of see it as, oh wait a sec, we're not really that much alive, or you can increase aliveness, right? But you see that most people are not really doing that much, because now a lot of people are just sitting with, let's say, a gadget. They're communicating with a gadget. So let's say eventually that we're gonna see, wait a sec, and just because it's such a big identity right now of the job that people need, when you have a better thinking machine that does that all better for you, then clearly it's going to be able to create value better than you. And then a person doesn't have to do that. Like, they don't have to come up with, or try to come up with super intelligent thoughts, because we already have the intelligence for that. If they want, they can still think and have thoughts, and it's kind of cool. But you see it also with a lot of ads, and when you see the patterns of how people are looking at the world, when you really see the limitations of it, when you really see the limitations of human thought, then you kind of realize that this AI thing is going to be good, because it's just going to make it so humans don't have to be in a box. That they don't have to be in a box of just identify with their thoughts and just looking at that as the whole creation itself, you know. So it's human uniqueness. That is something that always will be a mystery. you can look at when you're highly involved with another life form, another human, another animal, or nature. There is something unique. There is something unique, and that is an experience a person has to have. If they have a relationship with a person, I mean, that's a personal, unique experience that they're having. But there's no way. You see the limitations in words, in language, how you can't really explain human uniqueness, because each person has their own experience in life and with other humans, and you notice that every person is kind of unique. Like there is some kind of unique aspect about them, especially when they learn to be more life. Because and not just maybe stare at the screen, stare at the smartphone. I'm staring at the smartphone right now, but I noticed that the gadgets, it's kind of cool when they're gonna get smaller. Now with the Galaxy S10 Plus, I got a bigger gadget, 6.4-inch display, but I noticed that it's really just an awareness thing. I noticed that, I mean, there's going to be less, let's say, original stuff that people can put out if they're just trying to be intellectual. Because eventually you get to a point where you already covered something so many times, so the only way you can be unique is to be more life and just be more human. And a lot of stuff in the world has become so unnatural, so even talking about this it can be a challenge, because it needs a little bit of space. It needs a little bit of space where people can see, okay, their thoughts, that is a creation, that is not the person itself, that's a creation. And then they kind of see that they can be whatever it is they want to be, because if they can create thoughts, and if they can create their own emotions, their own experience, then they can sort of design their life the way they want it, and that's kind of cool, right? So, but yeah, it's going to be, thoughts are going to look a lot like limitations. And this is, I mean, this is something that humans always tries to, let's say, break limitations, especially when they can feel the box. You see it, people, you know, going to the moon and going to Mars, going to Pluto and all this. When humans find limitations, or when they have something that they covered, people always want the new, best, latest thing, something that sort of enhance the experience. That's also going to be a thing now. You're going to realize it when, or people are going to notice it when maybe they don't have a job, or maybe they do have a job but it's just passive, or it just flows in the background digitally. Maybe then they have more free time to consider stuff, consider life. And this is something that seems as it has happened in the past history, but that every time it sort of happens, it's a little bit different. It's not like a full repetition, but nature sort of rhymes in some form of way, and there are some form of patterns that sort of people can start to detect. But yeah, so that's a little bit what I wanted to talk about. So I really think eventually it's going to be a very good thing. It's going to be a very good thing, because it would be quite bad if, let's say, if humans were, like, if they were their thoughts, then of course AI would be a disaster. But because the thoughts are just a creation, then it's fine. It's like you can have this other machine sort of do all that, and humans can just focus on develop their own sort of nuanced uniqueness and becoming a human being. And that is really interesting, because when a person really starts to develop themselves and start to work on certain dimensions of themselves, or they start to try to pay attention a little bit more to what they're doing here and stuff like that, you can detect humans are always moving into something new. Everything is a little bit tweaked from day-to-day basis, and people can sort of start to see that life is sort of changing, and a human being sort of is a little bit changing. But there's still also, each human has their own sort of tendencies, some form of like inclinations that they have in life, that you can, like, if a person observes themselves, they can start to be observing the tendencies they have, inclinations to go towards certain behaviors, and it's going to be more fun in many ways, because it's way more nuanced. It's way more nuanced, a human being. Like, a human being is really not a small thing. So I like how you can't really put it into words, and that's kind of cool. That is just like a person has to experience themselves and start to explore with that, and it's not something that we can't put the whole sort of existence in a logical framework. You can't put everything into words, because the creation is too big for that, So it's very interesting how creation gives each human potential to be extremely unique, and if they just explore their own capabilities. But it's let's say it's like an individual choice, like how much a person wants to explore that, dive into it, and people gonna do it in different ways, and some people don't really care about that. Some people love to try to get to let's say massive, or let's say maybe they want to get to a massive truth in words, and maybe that can work. But if you really observe life, then you see that it's just as with money in many ways. Like, you can't really find words somewhere, or like, yeah, you can write them down, and but it's really all about language, and that's the same as with money. It's like, where is money? Especially now when paper money sort of is going away. It's like, where can I find it? And then you realize, wait a sec, it was just a language, it was just a system that people used to communicate with each other. And then you realize that with the words as well, it's just like, it's not really the creation, it's just a small little thing that humans sort of invented, and it's very useful. Like, people need it to sort of survive and stuff like that. But they're eventually gonna realize that that a lot of thoughts, a lot of that might be super, super petty, and it can be sort of easy to forget. Like, the AI is probably gonna try to create some form of internet where it tries to understand the human being, but it can never understand human uniqueness. It can never understand a human being, like their own sort of like, you can't, like, the human uniqueness, it's not like you can put it into thoughts about what it actually is. So the AI would try to understand it, and it probably is going to do it in two ways. Either try to make you addicted to something, or try to shock you with something and try to read data off of that. But eventually it should probably realize that it's going to be quite a hopeless case. And so it's like, in many ways, the AI cannot really understand a human being, the human uniqueness, which is, when a person realizes that, then they realize, well, AI is going to be quite good, right? Because it's only going to do the stuff, or it's going to do stuff so we don't have to do them, right? And, still, if a human want to do certain things, they can still do them. But it's like, okay, we can carry buckets of water with our own hands, or we can have a machine do it instead. And a lot of people still they will be like, oh, wait a second, I still want to carry the water, because it's like a security. It's what they know. But then eventually they realize, wait a second, I'm just going to use the machine. And that's the same way that sort of computers is going to work. They're just going to do stuff so a human being don't have to do them. And in many ways, humans still, they have this idea in their mind that they're doing like massive big things that true intelligence cannot do better than them, but it's going to do them. And it's going to be quite an interesting transition to see. People still have to pay attention, because human beings, they still have free will, and they can sort of move in all kinds of directions. I mean, we've seen humans do all kinds of things on this planet. So human beings, it's like you still have to pay attention to them, be attentive, and especially be attentive just to life in general, and see where that is heading. And that is kind of like the mystery of life, right? That you're never really gonna know where things moves and stuff like that, but you can see trends. And it's also same as with predictions. Like if we, for example, would make predictions, then in many ways we're sort of in some ways saying that we don't want to explore life. We just want to predict something, and then we want to be right about that a few years in the future, while nobody really wants to predict what's going to happen in 10 minutes from now, what's going to happen in 10 seconds. Like, nobody can predict that. Everyone wants to predict what's going to happen in 5 years, in 10 years, while nobody really knows, right? So the mystery in many ways is what makes stuff interesting. It's what makes every day sort of very exciting. Because if you pack everything inside of logic, then what's the point of a sunrise? What's the point of having friends and all this? I mean, if you really go by logic, like if you would pack everything, and the AI is going to do, just because it's going to do all these things more efficient and better than humans, you know, it's going to try to feed people ads, it's going to try to do a lot of things, but at the same time, humans, they should use technology to make stuff better, and they can use AI to do stuff, to reach more people, to get a better understanding for how stuff works. Can use Google, can search for information, and it's going to eventually move to better experiences, to better stuff. But it still, in many ways, is in the human's hands. If let's say they think the AI is super dangerous and stuff like that, that it's a machine, Terminator stuff, then that can manifest also. Because humans can sort of, if they create something and if they really believe it, then that can sort of manifest, right? So having clear eyes is going to be kind of important, or let's say clear perception, or more clarity, or moving towards more clarity, and not try to do so much, let's say, split up the existence, because logic most of the times is you wanna categorize everything. It wants to understand everything either factually or literally, and everything needs to sort of fit inside of some kind of box, while the creation don't really care that much about that. Yeah, that's what I want to talk a little bit about today. So human uniqueness is just, yeah, it's such an interesting topic, especially when people learn to become creators again. That's gonna be really cool. Yeah, have a great day, DTube and the Steam blockchain. And again, go watch Scott Cunningham's video on this. It's on DTube, and it's also on YouTube. You can search for his name, and yeah, and there's going to be many points of this. I should also say, we sort of start to see the duality starting to play out. Some people see that AI is amazing, and other people say AI is horrible. But the truth of the fact is, it's going to be some kind of in between. And people are going to manifest different things. People are probably going to have very different experiences with AI. And that probably is going to depend on a lot of things. Where a person lives, their own experiences, and like especially personal experiences in life, and what they have done in life, and what their senses have recorded. It makes such a big, it's such a big thing of how people are experiencing stuff and looking at things. But I eventually think everything's sort of moving forward, and it has been for a very, very long time. Yeah, have a great day, DTube, and esteem blockchain. Bye bye.